Admiral Sarah Chun sat in the human section of the Great Council Chamber. The room was huge. It could hold 5,000 beings from across the galaxy. Today, it was full. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the curved rows of seats. Their voices created a low buzz that echoed off the metal walls. Sarah looked around the chamber. She had been to many council meetings before. This one felt different. The air was thick with tension. She could see it in the way the aliens moved. They avoided looking at each other. They whispered in small groups. The Galactic Council met here on Kepler Station once every 3 months. The station hung in space above the planet Kepler 442b. It was neutral ground. No single species controlled it. All the major powers of the galaxy sent their representatives here. Sarah was not just watching today. She was worried. The humans had received hints that something big was going to happen. Their spies had picked up strange communications. Ships were moving in patterns that made no sense. Money was changing hands in backroom deals. The Valoran section was 3 rows down from the humans. Sarah could see Ambassador Kethver sitting straight in his chair. The Valorans were tall beings with tough gray skin. They had forearms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Kethver had been Earth's friend for 10 years. He had helped the humans many times. The Valorans were the only real allies humanity had in the galaxy. Other species tolerated humans. Some traded with them. But only the Valorans had stood beside Earth when the Krell Empire attacked 5 years ago. Only the Valorans had shared their military technology. Only the Valorans had signed a true alliance. Treaty. A deep sound filled the chamber. It was the call to order. All the voices stopped. The great screen at the front of the room lit up. Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian hegemony appeared. His blue skin looked pale in the artificial light. His 3 eyes focused on something Sarah could not see. "The session will begin," Vextar said. His voice was cold. "Today we address a matter of great importance to galactic peace." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She had heard those words before. They usually meant trouble for someone. "The Council has received a formal complaint," Vextar continued. "The Valoran Republic stands accused of threatening the stability of our galaxy." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Sarah saw Kethver's 4 hands clench into fists. This was what they had feared. This was the trap. "The evidence is clear," said Ambassador Xylon of the Centauri Collective. She stood up in her section. Her 6 legs clicked on the metal floor. "The Valorans have been building military bases on the rim worlds. They have been stockpiling weapons. They have made secret deals with the humans." Sarah wanted to stand up and shout. Everything Xylon said was a lie. The bases were defensive. The weapons were old models that Earth had given them years ago. The only secret deal was a promise to help each other if anyone attacked. But Sarah stayed in her seat. This was not her time to speak. Not yet. "These actions threaten the peace we have worked so hard to build," Xylon went on. "The Valorans and their human allies have become too powerful. They do not respect the authority of this council." More voices joined in. Species that had never spoken to each other before suddenly agreed. The Thraxian Empire nodded their massive heads. The Silicon Brotherhood's robots blinked their lights in approval. Even the peaceful Deltans raised their tentacles in support. Sarah realized what she was seeing. This had been planned. The votes had been bought or threatened long before today. The Zephyrians had built a coalition against the Valorans. Against Earth. "I call for an immediate vote," Vextar announced. "All in favor of economic sanctions against the Valoran Republic, signal now." Lights began to appear on the voting board. Red lights for yes, green lights for no. Sarah watched in horror as red light after red light flickered on. Species that owed their freedom to Valoran protection voted against them. Worlds that had been saved by Valoran fleets turned their backs. The final count appeared on the screen. 237 votes for sanctions. 42 votes against. 15 abstentions. The motion carries, Vextar said. Effective immediately, all trade with the Valoran Republic is suspended. All military cooperation agreements are void. All diplomatic protection is withdrawn. Sarah felt sick. She knew what this meant. The Valorans had 3 colony worlds on the far edge of the galaxy. Those worlds depended on trade to survive. Without supplies from the core systems, they would die slowly. Without military protection, they would be easy targets for raiders and pirates. Kethver stood up in his section. His voice carried across the chamber without any need for amplification. This council has made a grave mistake. The Valoran Republic has done nothing but serve the cause of peace. We have shed our blood to protect worlds that now vote against. U.S. History will remember this betrayal. The Valorans are free to appeal this decision, Vextar replied, through proper channels, following proper procedures. This session is now closed. The lights dimmed. Representatives began to file out of the chamber. Sarah saw Kethver walking toward the human section. His forearms hung at his sides. His yellow eyes looked tired. "Admiral Chun," he said when he reached her. "May I speak with you privately?" They walked together to a small meeting room near the human quarters. Sarah made sure the door was locked behind them. She turned on the signal jammer that would block any listening devices. "This is not about sanctions," Kethver said. "This is about elimination." Sarah nodded. "I know. How long do you think you have?" "Days, maybe weeks." Kethver's voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the pain in it. "My intelligence sources report Zephyrian fleets moving toward our space. They are not coming to enforce sanctions. What can Earth do to help?" Kethver was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing that would not destroy you as well. The Zephyrians have been very clever. They have made this legal under council law. If Earth interferes, you will be next on their list." Sarah felt angry and helpless at the same time. There has to be something. There is. Kethvar reached into his robes and pulled out a small data crystal. "This contains everything we know about the conspiracy. Ships' movements, communication intercepts, financial records. When we are gone, you will need this information." Sarah took the crystal. It was warm from Kethver's body heat. "You talk like you have already given up." "I am a realist, old friend. The Valoran Republic will not survive this. But perhaps our friendship will mean something when the time comes for justice." Kethvar placed one of his 4 hands on Sarah's shoulder. "Tell your people that we die as we have lived, with honor, and tell them to remember us when the galaxy shows its true face to humanity as well." They stood together in silence for several minutes. Finally, Kethvar walked to the door. He paused before opening it. "Admiral Chun, when your time comes, do not make our mistake. Do not trust the Council to do what is right. Do not believe that honor and justice matter to them. They understand only strength and fear." And he was gone. Sarah stood alone in the small room, holding the data crystal. Outside, she could hear the normal sounds of the station. Ships docking and leaving. Beings walking through the corridors. The everyday business of galactic civilization. But Sarah knew that everything had changed. The galaxy had just declared war on the only species that had ever truly been Earth's friend. And when the Valorans were dead, humanity would be alone, among the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the vote at Kepler Station. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. The room was full of screens and blinking lights. Officers moved quietly between the stations. Everyone spoke. In whispers. The data crystal from Kethvar had been right about everything. Zephyrian fleets were moving toward Valoran space. They were not alone. Ships from the Centauri Collective had joined them. So had vessels from a dozen other council species. Pirates and mercenaries followed behind like scavengers. Sarah stared at the main display screen. It showed the Kithara system in real time. Kithara was the Valoran homeworld. 4 billion Valorans lived there. It was the heart of their civilization. Their greatest cities, their most important factories, their government centers. Admiral, called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, "We are receiving transmissions from the Valoran Defense Fleet." "Put them on speaker," Sarah ordered. The voice that filled the room was strong and clear. It belonged to Fleet. Commander Thexani. Sarah had met him once during joint training exercises. He was young for a Valoran leader. He had only 200 years of experience. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. Enemy vessels detected at the edge of the system. Count is 347 ships. They are not responding to our communications. Assume hostile intent. Battle stations." Sarah felt cold. The Valoran fleet had only 60 ships defending their homeworld. Most of them were old designs. The trade sanctions had prevented them from getting new weapons and equipment. Long-range scanners show more enemy fleets approaching the colony. "Worlds," came another voice over the radio. "Estimates suggest over 800 ships total in the attack force." Sarah closed her eyes. 800 ships. The entire Valoran Navy had less than 200 vessels scattered across all their worlds. This was not a police action. This was genocide. The main screen switched to a view from a spy satellite hidden in the asteroid belt around Kithara. Sarah could see the massive enemy fleet as it moved into attack formation. The Zephyrian ships were blue and sleek. They looked like hunting predators. The Centauri vessels were gray blocks covered in weapons. Behind them came ships of every design. Some Sarah recognized. Others were completely alien. "First contact in 30 minutes, reported the sensor officer. "The Valorans are moving to intercept." Sarah watched as the small Valoran fleet left orbit around their homeworld. Their ships were darker than the others. They had thick armor and heavy guns. They were built for close combat, for standing and fighting no matter what the odds. "Can we help them?" asked Colonel Martinez, the military intelligence chief. "No," Sarah said quietly. "Not without starting a war between Earth and the entire galaxy. They know that. Kethver knew that when he gave me the crystal. The space battle began with flashes of light on the screen. Weapons fire looked like tiny stars being born and dying. The Valoran ships fought with desperate courage. They broke through the enemy lines again and again. They targeted the largest ships first. They made every shot count, but there were too many enemies. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Valoran formation began to spread out. Ships were pulled away from each other. They were surrounded and destroyed one by one. "Valoran flagship is taking heavy damage," reported Torres. "They are still broadcasting." Dexani's voice came through the speakers again. It was harder to understand now. There was noise and static from battle damage. "This is Fleet Commander. Dexani to all Valoran forces. The homeworld defense has failed. I repeat, the homeworld defense has failed. All remaining ships are ordered to evacuate civilian populations. Ignore military targets. Save who you can." Sarah bit her lip. Even in defeat, the Valorans thought of their people first. The main screen switched to show the planet's surface. Huge ships were landing in the major cities. They were not troop transports. They were bombardment platforms. The enemies had not come to conquer. They had come to destroy. Bright flashes began to appear across the continents. Each flash was a city dying. Millions of Valorans were being killed with each explosion. The attacks were systematic, precise. They had planned this for months. "Admiral," Torres called out. We are receiving a priority transmission. Personal channel for you. Source is the Valoran embassy on Kithara. Sarah knew who it was before Torres said the name. It's Ambassador Kethver. Put him through. Private channel. The screen in front of Sarah lit up. Kethver's face appeared. He was in a damaged room. Smoke drifted behind him. His yellow eyes looked directly at her. Sarah, my old friend. I do not have much time. Kethvar, can you get to an evacuation ship? He shook his head. The embassy is surrounded. Enemy troops are in the building. They are not taking prisoners. He paused as an explosion shook the room. I wanted to speak with you one last time. Don't talk like that. There has to be a way out. Listen to me carefully. The attack on our colonies began 6 hours ago. Valoran Prime fell 30 minutes. Go. New Kithara is under bombardment now. By tomorrow, there will be no Valoran Republic left in this galaxy. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. This is murder. This is genocide. Yes, and the Galactic Council will call it a police action. They will say we started the fight. They will say it was necessary for peace. Kethver's voice was calm. He had accepted his fate, but you and I know the truth. Another explosion. Louder this time. Kethver looked over his shoulder, then back at the screen. Sarah, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that humanity will remember us. Promise me that you will not let our deaths be meaningless. The galaxy thinks it has. Solve the problem by destroying us. Show them they have created a much bigger problem. I promise. Good. Kethver smiled. It was the first time Sarah had seen him smile in months. Tell your people that we died as we lived. With honor. Tell them that the Valorans were proud to call humanity our friends. The sound of weapons fire came through the speakers. Kethver looked toward his door. They are here. Goodbye, Admiral Chun. Avenge us. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Sarah stood in silence for several minutes. Around her, the command center continued its work. Officers monitored the destruction happening light years away. They recorded everything. They documented the genocide for history. Admiral, Torres said softly, we are receiving reports from our other listening posts. The colony worlds are gone. All of them. No survivors detected. What about their fleet? Any ships escape? Negative. All Valoran military vessels have been destroyed or captured. Total casualties are estimated at 4.7 billion beings. Sarah closed her eyes. An entire civilization had been wiped out in one day. Beings who had stood with humanity through 3 wars. Friends who had shared their technology and their knowledge. Allies who had never broken their word. What is the Council saying about this? Sarah asked. Colonel Martinez checked his reports. They are calling it a successful police action. They say the Valorans attacked first. They say minimal force was used. They are thanking the species who participated for maintaining galactic peace. Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. It was not sadness anymore. It was not grief. It was something much more dangerous. Get me President Harrison on the secure line, she ordered. Yes, Admiral. And Martinez, I want a full intelligence briefing on every species that participated. In this attack, I want to know where their homeworlds are, where their colonies are, where their fleets are stationed. I want to know their weaknesses. Admiral, what are you planning? Sarah looked at the dark screen where Kethver's face had been. I am planning to keep a promise. The command center fell silent. Everyone understood what those words meant. The galaxy had just made a terrible mistake. They had shown humanity what they really were. They had murdered Earth's only true friends. They had done it while hiding behind laws and procedures. But the galaxy had forgotten something important. Humans did not forgive. Humans did not forget. And humans were very, very good at war. The Valorans were gone. But their deaths would not be meaningless. Sarah would make sure of that. Admiral Sarah Chun had not slept in 3 days. She sat in her office in the Pentagon, staring at reports from across human space. Every military base was quietly preparing. Every shipyard was working around the clock. Every colony was sending volunteers to the fleet, but the galaxy did not know this. To the outside universe, Earth seemed quiet. Human ambassadors had returned home for consultations. Trade ships continued their normal routes. Everything looked peaceful. Sarah's door chimed. "Come in," she called. General Harrison walked into the room. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His face was grim. "Admiral, the President wants to see you. Now." "Where?" "Luna, the classified facilities." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. She had heard rumors about secret projects on the moon, but she had never been invited to see them. Very few people had. 2 hours later, Sarah was on a military transport heading toward Earth's moon. The ship was small and fast. It carried no identification markings. As they approached Luna, the pilot took them to the far side, the side that never faced Earth. "Admiral Chun," the pilot announced. "We are approaching Facility 7. Please prepare for docking." Sarah looked out the window. At first, she saw nothing but gray rock and ancient craters. Then her eyes adjusted. Hidden in a deep crater was a massive structure. It was built into the lunar rock itself. Ships were moving in and out of hidden bays. The transport docked inside a chamber that could hold 20 vessels. Sarah was met by a security team in black uniforms. They checked her identification 3 times before leading her deeper into the facility. She walked through corridors carved from solid rock. The walls were covered with blast-resistant metal. The lights were dim and red. Everything felt military and serious. President Harrison was waiting in a conference room deep inside the mountain. With him sat Defense Secretary Williams and Fleet Admiral Torres. Sarah had worked with Torres before. He was one of the best tactical minds in the human fleet. "Admiral Chun," the President said, "what you are about to see is classified above your current level. But recent events have changed our situation. Please sit down." Sarah took a chair at the metal table. "Mr. President, what is this place?" "This is where we have been preparing for the day when the galaxy shows its true nature," Admiral Torres answered. "We have been building this facility for 15 years. Ever since our first contact with the Galactic Council." "Building what?" Defense Secretary Williams activated a holographic display above the table. The image showed a massive ship. It was dark gray and covered with weapon systems. It looked like nothing Sarah had ever seen before. "This is the UES Retribution," Williams sighed, "the first of a new class of warships. We call them Extinction-class dreadnoughts." Sarah stared at the hologram. The ship was enormous. It dwarfed every other human vessel she knew about. "How big is it?" 2 kilometers long. 500 meters wide. "It carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon," Torres replied. "And we have built 7 of them." The hologram changed to show all 7 ships together. They hung in space like sleeping giants. Each one looked slightly different, but all carried the same message. These were ships built for one purpose: war. "Admiral," the President continued, "the Valorans were our friends. They were also our shield. While they existed, the galaxy saw us as junior partners, useful but not threatening. Now they are gone. How long do you think it will be before the Council decides? Humanity is the next problem to solve?" Sarah understood. They will come for us next. Exactly. The Zephyrians and their allies have tasted blood. They have proven they can destroy entire civilizations without consequences. Earth will be much easier to handle than the Valorans were. Admiral, Torres stood up and walked to another display. That is why we built these ships in secret. We used mining operations as cover. We told the galaxy we were digging for rare metals. We were actually building the largest military facility in human history. The display showed the inside of the lunar facility. It was vast, hundreds of levels carved into the rock. Factories, producing weapons and equipment. Training centers full of soldiers. Storage areas packed with supplies. How many people work here? Sarah asked. 50,000, Torres replied. All volunteers. All sworn to secrecy. Many of them are families of the crew members who will serve on these ships. What about the weapons? What makes these ships so special? William smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We studied every galactic warfare treaty. We found all the weapons that are considered too dangerous to use. Then we built better versions of those weapons. The hologram changed again. Now it showed weapon systems Sarah did not recognize. Quantum torpedo launchers. They can punch through any known shield system. Adaptive plasma cannons that learn from each shot and become more accurate. Zero-point energy bombs that can crack a planet's crust. Sarah felt cold. These weapons could destroy entire worlds. Yes, the president said simply. That is the point. The galaxy has shown us that they do not respect laws or treaties. They do not value honor or friendship. They only understand one thing. Fear, Sarah finished. Correct. We are going to teach them to fear humanity. We are going to make them understand that destroying our friends has consequences. Admiral Torres returned to his seat. Admiral Chun, you have been chosen to command the Third Fleet, 7 dreadnoughts and 50 escort vessels. Your mission will be to demonstrate these consequences to the galaxy. Sarah looked around the table. What exactly are my orders? The president leaned forward. Make them pay for what they did to the Valorans. Make them pay in blood and fire. Make sure that no species ever again thinks they can murder our allies without facing our revenge. Are there any limits on my actions? Only one, Williams replied. No human civilians are to be harmed. Everyone else who participated in the Valoran genocide is a legitimate target. Military bases, government centers, industrial facilities, civilian infrastructure that supports their war machine. Sarah felt the weight of what they were asking her to do. This could start a galactic war. The Galactic War already started. When they murdered 4 billion Valorans, Torres said, we are just going to finish it. The president activated another display. It showed a map of the galaxy with different colored dots. Red dots are species that voted for the sanctions. Yellow dots are species that provided military support for the attacks. Blue dots are species that remained neutral. Sarah counted the dots. There were over 200 red and yellow targets. All of them? All of them. But we will be strategic about it. We start with the weakest supporters. We work our way up to the main powers. We give them time to understand what is happening. Time to fear what comes next. When do we begin? Tomorrow, Torres answered. Your fleet is already prepared. Your crews have been training for months. They know what happened to the Valorans. They know what needs to be done. Sarah stood up. I need to see the ships. I need to meet my crews. Of course. But first, there is something else you need to understand. The president's voice became very serious. These ships have a final weapon, something we hope never to use. The hologram changed one last time. It showed a device Sarah did not recognize. It looked like a small metal sphere. We call it the Scorched Earth Protocol, Williams explained. It is a planet-killing weapon. Once activated, it makes a world uninhabitable for thousands of years. We have installed one on each dreadnought. Just in case, Torres added. Just in case they push us too far. Sarah stared at the sphere. She understood now why so few people knew about this project. These were not just ships. They were instruments of genocide, tools for ending civilizations. But the Valorans were dead. Kethver was dead. 4 billion innocent beings had been murdered while the galaxy watched and applauded. I accept the command, Sarah said. Good, the President replied. Admiral, when you leave this facility, you will have the power to reshape the galaxy. Use it wisely. Use it completely. Make sure that the name Valoran is remembered. Make sure that the galaxy learns what happens when they betray humanity's friends. Sarah walked to the window that looked out over the construction bays. She could see her new ships waiting for her, dark and silent and deadly. They looked like sleeping dragons waiting to breathe fire across the stars. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that humanity had been preparing for this day all along. Tomorrow, they would discover that killing the Valorans had not solved their problem. It had created a much bigger one. Tomorrow, the revenge would begin. The first sign that something had changed was the silence. Across the galaxy, human ambassadors stopped answering their communications. Trade ships from Earth simply disappeared from shipping lanes. The humans who worked on alien worlds packed their belongings and left without explanation. Ambassador Zealand of the Centauri Collective sat in her office on the council station. She had been trying to reach the human embassy for 3 days. Every message went unanswered. Every call was ignored. This is very strange, she said to her aide. The humans have never behaved this way before. Perhaps they are upset about the Valoran situation, the aide suggested. Xylan laughed. The humans are always upset about something. They complain, they protest, they make speeches. Then they go back to business as usual. This silence is not like them. She was wrong. The silence was exactly like humans. It was the quiet before. The storm got Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Retribution. Through the massive windows, she could see the rest of her fleet. 6 other dreadnoughts hung in space around her flagship. 50 escort ships formed protective rings around the larger vessels. Admiral, called Commander Park from the navigation station, we are ready to jump to hyperspace. Target is the Proxima Centauri system. Sarah nodded. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. Today, we begin to collect the debt owed to our Valoran friends. Every species that participated in their murder will pay the price. We will show the galaxy that humanity does not forget. We will show them that we do not forgive. She paused and looked around the bridge. Her crew was ready. They had trained for this moment for months. They knew what they had to do. Jump when ready, Commander. Space twisted around the human fleet. Reality bent and folded. In an instant, they traveled hundreds of light years. When the stars stopped moving, they were at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. The system was home to the largest Centauri supply depot in the galaxy. From here, ships carried food and equipment to the forces occupying former Valoran worlds. The depot was defended by 12 Centauri warships and a network of automated defense platforms. Enemy contacts detected, reported Lieutenant Williams. From the sensor station, 12 heavy cruisers moving to intercept. They are requesting identification. No response, Sarah ordered. All ships, battle stations. Target the enemy fleet first, then the depot. The Centauri ships approached in formation. They looked confident. 12 ships against 7 seemed like good odds to them. They had no idea what they were facing. They are powering weapons, Williams announced. Incoming missile launch detected. Sarah watched the tactical display as dozens of missiles streaked toward her fleet. The Centauri had always relied on overwhelming firepower. They believed in quantity over quality. "Point defense systems, engage," she commanded. The human ships came alive with defensive fire. Lasers and particle beams reached out to destroy the incoming missiles, but some got through. They struck the shields of the human vessels with bright flashes. The shields held easily. The new ships had been built to withstand much worse attacks. "Our turn," Sarah said. "All ships, target the enemy formation." Quantum torpedoes, full spread. The space around the human fleet lit up as new weapons fired. The quantum torpedoes moved faster than anything the Centauri had ever seen. They passed through the enemy shields like they were not there at all. The first Centauri ship exploded in a ball of fire. Then the second. Then the third. Within minutes, the entire enemy fleet was destroyed. Twisted metal and frozen bodies drifted. In space where proud warships had been. "All enemy vessels destroyed," Williams reported. "The depot is requesting surrender." Sarah looked at the supply depot on the main screen. It was a massive structure. Thousands of Centauri worked there. It supplied the fleets that were now occupying Valoran worlds. Negative. "All ships, target the depot. Plasma cannons, maximum power." "Admiral," Commander Park said quietly, "there are civilians on that station." Sarah turned to look at him. Her face was cold. "Were there civilians on Kithara when the Centauri helped destroy it?" Park said nothing. The human fleet opened fire on the depot. The adaptive plasma cannons tore through the station's defenses. Section after section exploded in brilliant light. Within an hour, the entire complex was reduced to scrap metal and vapor, but Sarah was not finished. The supply depot was just the beginning. "Target the mining stations," she ordered. Then the shipyards and the civilian orbital habitats. "Admiral," Park protested, "those are non-military targets." "The Centauri made their choice when they helped murder the Valorans," Sarah replied. "Now they face the consequences." One by one, every Centauri installation in the system was destroyed. When the human fleet finally stopped firing, there was nothing left but debris and emergency pods carrying survivors. "Open a channel to the escape pods," Sarah commanded. The main screen showed frightened Centauri faces. Their 6 legs shook with fear. Their eyes were wide with shock. "This is Admiral Chun of the Earth Defense Force," Sarah announced. "Your government participated in the genocide of the Valoran Republic. This is your punishment. Tell your leaders that this is only the beginning. Tell them that humanity remembers our friends." She gestured to the communications officer. "Broadcast this message on all frequencies." A recording began to play across the system. It was the final transmission from Ambassador Kethver. His voice filled the space around the destroyed depot. "Tell your people that we die as we lived. With honor, avenge us, old friend." The transmission ended. Sarah looked out at the wreckage floating in space. Somewhere in that debris were the bodies of beings who had celebrated the Valoran massacre just weeks ago. "Set course for the next target," she ordered. The pattern was repeated across a dozen systems over the next 2 weeks. Human fleets appeared. Without warning, they destroyed everything they found. Military bases, supply depots, shipyards, mining facilities. Even civilian structures that supported the war effort. The attacks were swift and merciless. The humans used weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Their ships moved with precision that seemed impossible. They showed no mercy to anyone who had participated in the Valoran genocide. News of the attacks spread quickly through the galaxy. Fear began to replace the confidence that had followed the Valoran victory. Chancellor Vexstar of the Zephyrian Hegemony sat in his private office, reading reports from the front lines. 12 systems had been attacked. Over 300 ships had been destroyed. Millions of beings were dead or missing. "How is this possible?" he asked his military advisor. "Our intelligence said the humans had less than 200 ships total." "The Intelligence was wrong, Admiral Crichton replied. These ships are completely new designs. Our weapons barely scratch their shields. Their weapons cut through our defenses like they are made of paper. What do they want? Have they made any demands? No demands. No negotiations. They attack and then disappear. The only message they leave is always the same. Vextar activated his desk display. The image of Kethvar appeared, speaking his final words. The Chancellor had heard this recording dozens of times now. It haunted his dreams. They are doing this for the Valorans, he said. Yes, they call it revenge. Vextar was quiet for a long time. How many more systems can they hit? All of them. Our forces are scattered across 200 worlds. We cannot defend everywhere at once. And our allies? The Centauri are demanding protection. The Thraxians are pulling their fleets back to defend their homeworld. Half of our coalition is falling apart. Vextar stood up and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the blue skies of Zephyr Prime. His homeworld looked peaceful, beautiful. But he knew that somewhere in the darkness between stars, human warships were planning its destruction. Contact the human fleet, he ordered. Offer to negotiate. Sir, we have tried. They do not respond to any communications. Then send a message through the Galactic Council. Demand that they stop these attacks. Admiral Crichton looked uncomfortable. Sir, the Council has no authority over the humans anymore. Earth withdrew from all treaties after the Valoran vote. They are no longer bound by galactic law. Vextar felt cold fear creeping into his chest. What are you saying? I am saying that we created this situation. We destroyed their allies. We showed them that the Council would not protect anyone from genocide. Now they are applying the same lesson to us. The Chancellor sat back down heavily. On his desk, Kethvar's final message continued to play on repeat. The dead Valoran's words seemed to echo in the room. Tell your people that we die as we lived, with honor. Avenge us, old friend. And somewhere in the darkness, Admiral Sarah Chon was keeping that promise. 6 months had passed since the first attack. The galaxy was in chaos. Trade routes had collapsed. Entire sectors had gone dark. Fear ruled where confidence once lived. Admiral Sarah Chon stood on the bridge of the UE's Retribution, looking out at the Zephyr system. Around her flagship, 200 human warships waited in formation. The Third Fleet had grown as more ships arrived from Earth. This would be the largest battle in human history, and it would be the last battle for the Zephyrian hegemony. Admiral, Commander Park reported, long-range sensors detect the enemy. Fleet, 347 vessels defending the homeworld. Sarah nodded. The Zephyrians had called in every ship they could find. Vessels from across their empire had gathered here to make a final stand. It was impressive. It was also useless. Any response to our surrender demands? She asked. Negative. Chancellor Vextar refuses to negotiate. He says the hegemony will never bow to human terrorists. Sarah almost smiled. Terrorists. They still did not understand what they were facing. This was not terrorism. This was justice. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. Today, we finish what the Zephyrians started when they murdered our Valoran friends. Today, we show the galaxy the price of betraying humanity's allies. All vessels advanced to attack formation. The human fleet began to move toward Zephyr Prime. Their ships were dark against the stars, silent and deadly. They had learned to hunt in the past 6 months. They had become very good at it. On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Crichton watched the human approach. His 3 eyes tracked the enemy formation on the tactical display. He had studied every report from the previous battles. He knew what these ships could do. All ships, prepare for battle, he commanded. Remember, we fight not just for the hegemony, but for the future of galactic civilization. These humans must be stopped here. The Zephyrian fleet moved to intercept. Their blue ships gleamed in the light of their home star. They were beautiful vessels, works of art as much as weapons of war. But beauty would not save them today. The two fleets met in the space between Zephyr Prime and its moon. The battle began with a massive exchange of missiles. Thousands of weapons filled the darkness. With streaks of light, the Zephyrians had more ships, but the humans had better technology. The quantum torpedoes struck first. They passed through Zephyrian shields as if they were not there. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant fire. The adaptive plasma cannons followed, learning from each shot and becoming more deadly with every beam. But the Zephyrians fought back with desperate courage. They had nowhere to retreat. This was their homeworld. Their families lived on the planet below. They charged into the human formation, accepting massive losses to get close enough for their weapons to be effective. "Multiple hits on Deck 7, reported the damage control officer. "Shield generators 2 and 5 are offline." Sarah felt the ship shake as enemy fire found its mark. The Zephyrians were not going down easily. They were making the humans pay for every victory. "Emergency power to forward shields," she ordered. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessel." The human fleet focused its weapons on Admiral Crixon's flagship. The massive Zephyrian ship was struck by dozens of quantum torpedoes at once. Its shields collapsed. Its armor melted. But it continued to fight even as it died. "Their flagship is breaking apart," Commander Park announced. "But they are still firing." Sarah watched as the Zephyrian command ship split in half. Even then, its crew continued to operate the weapons. They fired until the very last moment. Until there was nothing left but wreckage and stars. The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships burned and died on both sides. The space around Zephyr Prime became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. But slowly, the human fleet gained the advantage. The Zephyrians had courage. They had determination. But they did not have the weapons to fight ships designed by beings who had spent 15 years preparing for this war. As the last enemy vessel exploded, Sarah looked out at the planet below. Zephyr Prime hung in space like a blue jewel. Billions of Zephyrians lived on its surface. They were the beings who had planned and executed the Valoran genocide. "Admiral," Commander Park said quietly, "we are receiving surrender requests from the planetary government. Chancellor Vexstar wants to negotiate." Sarah looked at him with cold eyes. Did the Zephyrians negotiate when they attacked Kithara? Did they show mercy to Valoran children? No, Admiral. Then we will show them the same mercy they showed our friends. Sarah turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare the scorched earth." Protocol. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at her. They had trained for this moment, but none of them had believed it would actually happen. "Admiral," Park protested, "that will kill billions of civilians. Billions of civilians who cheered when the Valorans died. Billions of civilians who benefited from the Valoran genocide. Billions of civilians who called for humanity to be next on their list." Sarah walked to the weapons console. She placed her hand on the activation scanner. "Computer, confirm authorization for Scorched Earth Protocol." Authorization confirmed. Admiral Sarah Chun, Commanding Officer U.E.'s Retribution. Warning: this action will render target planet uninhabitable for approximately 4,000 years. Confirm activation. Sarah thought of Kethver. She thought of his final message. She thought of 4 billion Valorans who had died while the galaxy watched and applauded. Activation confirmed. Deep in the hull of the Retribution, a small metal sphere began to glow. It was no bigger than a human fist, but it contained enough destructive power to crack a planet. The sphere was loaded into a special torpedo tube. Targeting systems locked onto Zephyr Prime. Scorched Earth torpedo launched, the weapons officer announced. The torpedo fell toward the planet like a dark star. It was too small for the Zephyrian defenses to detect, too fast for them to intercept. It struck the surface near the largest city on the main continent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planet began to die. The explosion started small. A flash of light on the surface, but it grew quickly. The weapon reached into the planet's core and poisoned it. The atmosphere began to burn. The oceans started to boil. The very ground became toxic. Within hours, every living thing on Zephyr Prime was dead. Within days, the planet itself was uninhabitable. The weapon would continue its work for thousands of years, making sure that nothing could ever live there again. Sarah stood on the bridge and watched a civilization die. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a cold sense of completion. The debt had been paid. Open a channel to the galaxy, she ordered. All frequencies. Emergency broadcast. The communications officer worked quickly. Soon, every world in the galaxy would receive her message. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force, she began. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council voted to destroy the Valoran Republic. You called it a police action. You called it necessary for peace. You murdered 4 billion innocent beings while the galaxy watched and applauded. She paused and looked out at the dying planet. Today, justice has been served. Zephyr Prime burns as Cathara burned. The Zephyrian hegemony dies as the Valoran Republic died. This is what happens to those who betray humanity's allies. This is what happens to those who mistake our patience for weakness. The camera focused on her face. Her eyes were hard as diamonds. Her voice was steady as stone. To the remaining members of the Galactic Council, I say this: remember the Valorans. Remember that they died calling humanity their friend. Remember that we do not forget. We do not forgive, and we do not make empty threats. She gestured toward the screen showing Zephyr Prime. The planet was now completely dark. No lights, no cities, no life. Any species that threatens humanity or our allies will face the same fate. Any government that supports genocide will be destroyed. Any leader who votes for the murder of innocents will answer to our justice. Sarah looked directly into the camera. The age of galactic peace is over. The age of human justice has begun. Choose your friends carefully. Choose your enemies even more carefully. Because when you betray those we care about, we will bring fire from heaven to burn your worlds to ash. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, beings stared at their screens in horror. An entire planet had been destroyed in hours. A civilization that had existed for thousands of years was gone forever. In the silence that followed, one sound could be heard on every world. It was the voice of Ambassador Kethver speaking his final words. Tell your people that we die as we lived, with honor. Avenge us, old friend. Admiral Sarah Chun had kept her promise. The Valorans were avenged. The galaxy would never forget what happened to those who betrayed humanity's friends out in the darkness between stars. Where once there had been trust and cooperation, now there was only fear. Fear of the quiet species from a small blue planet. Fear of the beings who had learned that sometimes the only path to peace was to make war so terrible that none would dare repeat the betrayal. The Valorans were gone, but their memory lived on in the fire that burned across the galaxy, and in the promise that humanity would never again allow their friends to die alone.